Okay, this week, just one package. I get to smile, that's why I'll find the little tab up here. Oh yes, that's right. And this one has 2 hentais in it. Which is actually 2 hentais that I missed last week. 3-pack of Raunchy Redemption. Which I didn't think I had any of these titles already. What are they? Express. Kitty's Salacious Sensations. Okay. What? Is that Sexy Days Naughty Nights or Sexy Naughty Days Nights? Sexy Naughty D's Nuts. I don't know. Well, we got Blu-ray and DVD versions. And then, this one's actual anime. Rent-A-Girlfriend Season 3. Well, okay, technically the hentai is anime because it is animated in Japan and blah 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 blah. Let's get this plastic off first. Well, that was nice and quick. And now let's see. That's a region A and B. That's English and Japanese audio. Oh, which subtitles? Subs English. So it's a pretty straightforward dubbed release. I still haven't watched season 2, and so obviously I also haven't watched season 3. I don't think I watched season 2. But straightforward. I guess we can actually, since this is the only thing I'm going to open up, take a look kind of at the art through the glue of the thing itself. Easy stuff. Oh, yeah, so pretty small update this week, but yeah, here's this week's physical anime collection update. Okay, for this week off, I ended up not catching up on any of my anime, so yeah, I guess it pretty much means that I'm just falling behind on most of that stuff. You know, maybe I've still got a couple things I'm like, maybe if I feel like I have the energy, I'll catch up on them. I'm curious about a lot of them, but oh well. End of this month, beginning next month, we do have the next season of stuff, though. I took a look in. I realized we don't have the first air dates for some of them, but that's I'm looking forward to it. But let's talk about the stuff I've watched here. So there was a dubbed episode of Reincarnated as a Slime, episode 67. Entertaining enough little section. I don't know if I have anything to super comment on other than it was entertaining watching it again. It's pleasant events. A lot of the season is mostly non-confrontational pleasant stuff, which makes me wonder, like, the show isn't a very inherently confrontational show to begin with. It does have its moments, but yeah, it's interesting. But you know, it's world building. The trick is it's hard to tell how much of this world building will lead to further confrontations or interesting developments, I guess, and it's hard to say. Especially since there are certain things that the first season showed that it hasn't really been exploring too much, that I'm like, I wonder what'll be up with that. Oh well, it's taking its time. And so, you know, I watched that with my Friday friend, and obviously on my own I watched the latest episode, episode 69 of Reincarnated as a Slime. What happened in this episode? Okay, martial arts tournament stuff. And I highly appreciate the fact that the pacing feels about right. Like, maybe they could have smaller, I don't know, they could focus on individual fights a bit more, but at the same time, I would say the real meat of what you want to see isn't there, and so you really want to see what's going to come up. And I feel like, well, some shows may say, yes, we know that's what you want to see, but here we're showing this character, or maybe they make the excuse that they're whetting your appetite, but sometimes I feel like they can really draw it out too much, and I felt like what Slime was doing here is a good enough balance. I don't think it's gotten us to the stuff where we really want to see. but it felt paced well enough that it doesn't feel like it's dragging things out. It also doesn't feel like it's going too fast, I guess. There are some things in there that are just like it's kind of silly, but not like bad silly, just like, I don't know, something that's like, okay, because that subtle thread of silliness I'm hinting at is what it's building up to, and I think I'm curious to see what's going to happen. It'll most likely lead to something not confrontational, or maybe something else confrontational will happen, but overall, I guess nice enough stuff. And then the other thing I watched with my Friday friend is we watched the first 2 episodes of Demon Slayer Hashira training arc. And I've said this a lot for Demon Slayer, but Nezuko is criminally underutilized, but it's fine for this one. Like, based on the name of it, I was kind of like, oh well, I guess it's gonna be like that. But no, it feels like the Hashira training aspect of this is. It isn't just, oh, well, this just happens to be where our main character goes next. No, it's where the fucking world goes. So it's like taking the important things that happened in the previous season. This one's starting off with setting up some really great important stuff. And I appreciate the fact that the show's like acknowledging the big events that happened in the previous season. And not just like, okay, well, it's sort of not. No, that was big fucking shit, and I appreciate the fact that the first 2 episodes of this are moving forward, setting stuff up, and you can kind of sort of see what it's doing that makes it where the fundamental premise of this is more world is shaking up, but at the same time, even though our main characters haven't been as involved, it's showing us, oh my god, this is how they're going to become really involved, isn't it? So I'd say it's really good stuff. But again, the big problem is just want to see more Nezuko, because she's always adorable when on the screen, and want to see her interacting with more characters. They even had stuff that's like, oh, well, I want to see them interact with her now. Yeah, things like that. But, only the first 2 episodes, and it was a little slower than expected because episode 1 was a double-length episode, so makes sense. This keeps happening. No Longer Allowed in Another World, episode 9. I think it was an okay episode. I wouldn't say it was as touching as the previous episode, but I could see this one being more touching for certain people. They have some good storytelling elements to both of them, and they're not like the same story all over and all over again. It's the show's showing some good variety, I suppose. And I don't think variety is the exact word I want to get, but it's not being a one-trick pony over and over again. It's just been nice how some of its ideas, it's playing with them in neat ways. So, definitely appreciating it, though we're getting close to the end of that show. Strongest Magician in the Demon Lord Army was a human, episode 11. I guess it was stuff that set up for the next thing. And it's okay, but I don't know, something about the show always just feels off, I guess. And I'm trying to think of what I can describe about this episode. I was like, okay. Like, it's very watchable, but at the same time, there's something about its storytelling that's off. And I just don't know how to talk about it without blatantly spoiling things, I suppose. Which is why, I'm trying to talk more about general feelings, and I think I've said more about some of the other episodes than I would have preferred. But overall, I don't know, I guess I'm going for something, and yeah, it was just okay. Failure Frame, episode 9. I guess it was a good enough episode, just kind of really confused by the actions of the Duke. I think it was the Duke. But, overall it was fine. Entertaining. I Parry Everything, episode 10. Okay, I guess we saw the events from the previous episode in a new angle, and I guess they set up for whatever they're about to do after this, and it was all okay, I guess. But it felt like an episode that was mostly set up for whatever's probably about to be the finale of the series, I guess. Probably 2 more episodes or something, and the next one they do the big thing, and then they have a final episode after that where it's okay, everything's resolved, I guess. It's stuff. Dungeon People, episode 9. Let's see. Yeah, it's really quite interesting. I don't know why this show continues to feel as interesting and watchable as it is. It's just definitely very strange because it looks like it has that sort of art and storytelling style where it's just like, I guess it's not really doing much. But for some reason, the events that keep happening continue to just be interesting. Like, there was even action here where it's like, not like super, 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 bam, this is action of the year kind of action, but it was the right kind of stuff that you, excuse me, that I guess is appreciable. And, yeah, I don't know. It continues to be a good show. Dolly and Bloom, episode 10. Maybe an okay episode, I guess. I guess some interesting stuff here and there. I'm trying to think what it might have set up, but, it continues to be a show that, when it finally gets out of the shadow of the father, which, it's not 100%, it's still in the penumbra. The penumbra would be the edge of shadow for those of you who are unaware with the word. And yes, I learned that because there was a video game of that name, and, that's sometimes how you learn stuff. But overall, when it's under that, it feels very weak. When it's not under that, it's doing okay. But I'm not sure if it's necessarily above good, per se. I don't think it's necessarily a great show. There's going to be some people who really love it, for sure. But I think you can just feel, it's not going to be for everyone. Elusive Samurai this week was a recap episode, and it was entertaining to rewatch, more entertaining to rewatch than I would have thought, especially since I've shown the series to a couple of people. So I've watched the first episode a couple of times, and seeing as that was a majority of the recap, kind of, you would think, no, surely a recap episode wouldn't be entertaining, and it can probably be skipped. I don't think there was any new information introduced by it whatsoever. All stuff that we had seen up to that moment. But, if you're enjoying the show and you find it to be rewatchable, then, well, this episode will be very rewatchable, I would say. But, like y'all, I want to see what happens for real next. Let's see, Why Does Nobody Remember Me in This World? Episode 9. I guess it's okay stuff. It's moving forward, and I'm just trying to remember what else it was setting up. And stuff. But I think it had a stinger, and it feels like maybe the stinger is closer to revealing even more information, and so in that regard, it's been kind of nice that it's a story that feels like it's going somewhere. But yeah, curious about the stinger. McCain, Too Many Losing Heroines, episode 9. I hope I've got that right. I think that's right. Entertaining enough stuff. That sister, though, she's, it's interesting because even though she doesn't have a lot of screen time, his sister is pretty impressionable. Which is interesting because I know some of y'all are watching, that one where that girl sometimes hides her feelings in Russian. And I know that the sister character in that one is like, Jesus Christ. And yeah, I've seen some of those scenes and Jesus Christ. Probably if anybody is telling me that I should have been watching that, it would probably be because of her, I would guess. But yeah, for Makini, main character's sister is a treasure to be protected. One of Japan's national treasures or something like that. So fun stuff. Atri, episode 9. I'd say this is actually good stuff. Stuff that's like, okay. I wasn't quite sure what, from a storytelling perspective, I would have said I'd thought about everything up to this point. But for the stuff that's happening, I feel it's like, okay, now this feels like it's trying to describe something, and it didn't finish what it was in the middle of a big doing. But it did set itself up so that I'm curious to see what happens the next episode and what the show is exploring and doing. And at this point, the show becomes much more comparable to the premise of My Wife is Silent. Was it My Wife is Silent? My Wife is Emotionless? Whereas, both of them kind of have this issue where, okay, you have a person that's a romantic interest who's a robot, essentially, but they're not set up to feel like robots, per se. Atri actually initially felt more convincing in that regard than Emotionless Wife. And I haven't continued watching Emotionless Wife to see if that does anything, but, they kind of have two different goals, ultimately. And I kind of prefer what Atri is doing with it. Which may be alarming to some people, because at the same time it's a romantic thing where the romantic girl interest is, she looks petite, and some people have a problem with that. For me, I actually kind of consider that to be a little bit ableist, but I don't like that word either, so I guess we all feel bad about me saying that. But I digress. I like what it's morally or philosophically or something exploring right now. Because everything else has been, okay, well, they're in a world where maybe there's a slow degeneration of human society because of the rising sea level stuff. And so is the show setting up a thing where it's like, oh, is this the humanity that's going to be there after humanity is gone? Didn't feel like it was setting that up. Is this how they discover how to live in this world? Is this how they find innovative solutions that lead to solution? All of it, not all of it, but most of it sounded like, the more likely it sounded to be, the less entertaining it sounded like it would be. But now it's exploring stuff that's interesting. It's like, well, if the show was about this the entire time, that would have been perfect. And maybe this scenario is good for setting that up, and everything leading up to this point is good for setting up. But it's also too early, where unless this thing is ending with episode 11, I have to wonder what's coming after this, and if it maybe is building up to something that does feel like everything belongs together. So I'm looking forward to that. Raising Kids While Adventuring, episode 11. So, we were introduced to Vector the Storm Lion, I guess. And that was really interesting. So, they finally revealed who his English voice actor is going to be, and Vector is an animal character, and so, it was only once that animal character leveled up and we got to hear his telepathic voice that we'd know who he is, and hey, it's the same as the English voice actor for Bildor the Storm Dragon, and I think it's a very appropriate voice. He sounds happy, boastful, proud, something like a dragon, something like a lion, king of the jungle, things like that. And so it's kind of fun. But content wise, I guess that stuff was kind of interesting. And was there anything else? I don't know. It's been an okay series, but missing bits and pieces of engagement, I thought. So I was quite surprised that a lot of people are enjoying it, just because, like I said, it kind of does the, well, okay, the animals are fine because the animals are spiritual beasts essentially created by the gods, but sometimes the kids don't feel like these are what kids would be like, and more like what something pretending that kids would be like. But, you know, setting that aside, it's just, I don't know. It's been there. Wisteria, Wand and Sorcery, or sorry, Wand and Sword, episode 9. I think this was a good episode. Good action happening in it, and interesting twists. I forgot that there were some twists that they revealed at the end of the previous episode, but this one showed, okay, yeah, there's it's got good stuff that it's doing, interesting stuff that it's doing, and it's interesting. And I think it keeps bringing in elements that are like, okay, and even though there's good action in here, there's things that are like, okay, I really like kind of the social development that's happening because of some of this action. Whether it's people fighting and kind of coming to a fiery connection, I guess, or things like that. You know, it's been good in that regard. So it's been a really strong series this season. Let's see, Osan Newbie Adventurer, episode 10. Okay, I guess. But once again, it just feels like the show... See, I don't like this one too much. I find it very watchable, but the thing I don't like about it is it just sort of feels like it's just sort of doing stuff and not necessarily, oh yes, let's tell you a story, because it's like, okay, if the story's supposed to be about the Osan Newbie Adventurer, the previous episode was better for that than that, but at the same time, they're at this tournament, and it seems like it's like 3 or 4 levels distracted from why they're at this tournament, and it's not some 52 episode season or something like that. It just sort of feels like, I don't know, it just feels like too much is being thrown around, but at the same time it also keeps distracting from what I would say is the more important main character, like, because now it's like I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I was kind of worried that it was about to be about this one character, and I know it's not about that one character, but for this episode it was more about that one character than our main character. So yeah, still watchable, maybe just not great, but good, or okay, or something like that. Spice and Wolf, Merchant Meets the Wise Wolf, episode 23. More developments, and the more these develop, the more I can't help but feel like, if I were to take a guess, whatever happened at the end of the previous second season was either something from later, or more likely I feel like it was maybe something maybe made up for that season 2, because the theming for this one feels more in line with the basic premises of the show. And it's setting itself up for the final episode to happen, I believe. It feels like that. I'm guessing it's a 24 episode thing, because that was episode 23, and the next one, I could see that one being an end of a thing. But yeah, overall, entertaining enough, and I think a good setup for whatever's going to happen in the next episode, I think. Just trying to think of the pacing for everything else, and thinking if I can think of anything about what that might imply, but I don't know. At this point, you know, I just end my anime watching before I watch or record this video by watching that, and it's very nice to hear them talk and speculate and stuff. And I do prefer when it's not being overtly romantic, just because then I get reminded of how exhausting it would be to know Holo in real life. I'm like, no thanks. I'd be a friend with Lawrence, but I wouldn't be an enemy with Holo. I just would be like, I'd probably be looking for excuses. Not really. And instead it would be more like, I would just be basically, I'd be just saying, sorry, you're just too much for me to handle. Let's just be acquaintances, and you can come over with Lawrence and spend most of your time interacting with him. Something like that. I don't know. I haven't thought about it a whole lot, so if it seems like I'm thinking about it too much, it's just because I just had that thought, and it was strange thoughts. Fun stuff. So, do I have anything else to talk about? I ended up not playing a whole lot of Dead by Daylight this week. Probably played more Pokemon than Dead by Daylight, but even that was pretty light, just doing some simple things. I don't know, it was a good week for me to take excess amounts of naps, relax. I had a lot of stuff to do on Tuesday, a lot of chores, and then a couple more chores, Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that. Like I put off laundry half a week, but, it's all good. Overall, yeah, it was a good relaxing week, but not much else to talk to y'all about that would be actually interesting. So then, I guess it makes sense to wrap this video up. Y'all, have a nice week.